Thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
Considering horse ownership? Get off the bench and get in the game. We have one goal: make racehorse ownership a slam dunk.
It's Maxim Rate close to home. Maxim Rate has won the game lead.
A terrific finish in the Woody Stevens that goes to drain the clock by a head.
Slam Dunk Racing. Come win with us.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Past the Wire TV. I'm John Stetton, and I am here with Nick Cosato, who is the man behind Slam Dunk Racing, another one of the exciting partnerships, and really on the stakes level in thoroughbred racing today. Nick is an interesting guy, interesting background, and a lot of success in the thoroughbred industry with Slam Dunk Racing, prior to Slam Dunk Racing, and we'll touch on all of that. But first of all, let me introduce Nick. And Nick, thanks for coming on Past the Wire TV.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be with you today.
No, my pleasure. And where I want to start, normally I would start with how you got involved in racing, but I'm going to fast forward. You were a successful jockey agent. You handled people like Garrett Gomez and stuff like that. Before I get into the transition from being an agent to being an owner and ultimately starting a successful partnership, I want to ask you a question I ask most agents that have been successful. I know it's tough on all levels, but is it harder to be an agent going barn to barn with a no-name rider that you've got to beg for mounts for, or is it harder once you're at the top with a name rider because everybody wants you and you got to keep everybody happy and know which calls to take?
That's a great question, John. It's definitely more difficult when you're not in demand. It's not as much fun. Knocking on doors where people don't want your services, it kind of makes you feel like you're not wanted in a way. It's hard not to take it personal. I know early on in my career, I kind of felt like I was a black sheep. But also you touched on something very, very pertinent. When you get going, it's hard keeping everyone happy. You look at on this circuit, Flavien Prat, there's a pretty big disparity from him to the second leading rider. He's very much in demand. So on this circuit, it would be very difficult for Flavien Prat's agent to keep everybody happy.
Right, and I know there's a lot of talk about spinning people and stuff like that. It's probably as competitive as everything is in racing. Being an agent is probably right up there at the top of the competitiveness in the sport. No?
Oh, indeed, very cutthroat, very competitive. I've pretty much my whole 25-year career, I worked on the West Coast.
Right.
I would say the West Coast circuit is the most competitive because unlike the East Coast where they're traveling and you're kind of working half the year with a set of agents and then another half of the year with another set of agents. In California, we're on an island out here and we never leave. So we're kind of stuck with the same guys. And if you have enemies, it's great if you have a lot of friends, but if you have a lot of enemies, it can make for a long year.
They're in trouble for sure.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting. There are not many agents that go from being an agent to being an owner. How did that happen, and what put that idea in your head?
Well, as an agent, I owned a horse here and there, and I always kind of dabbled and loved it. I got away from the game and actually started a clinical research company for the year that I was not an agent or an owner. And then I got back in, and when I got back in, it wasn't under the heading of Slam Dunk Racing. I just ran under my own name. Sometimes wasn't even on title. Like I owned Wee Miss Frankie with Peter, and she won 2 grade ones. My name wasn't even on her. But then I started getting some interest in like a handful of friends that said, Nick, why don't you start a partnership? So I thought, you know what, I'll give this a whirl. Maybe we'll get about half a dozen guys, maybe get a dozen horses or so. And the next thing I knew, 5 years later, actually probably 3 years later, when my son came to work for us, we got up to 80 horses and close to 30 parts. So it grew pretty organically and pretty quickly, John.
Yeah, I was going to say to get to 80 that fast is almost unheard of, especially with partnerships. You know, that's exponential growth.
Yeah, you know, I kind of play everything at 100 miles an hour. I don't know what the speed limit is. And that works many times to my advantage and sometimes to my detriment. But I'm passionate about the game. I love it. I was passionate as an agent. I grew up right next to Santa Anita Racetrack in Temple City. I was damn near born on a racetrack. So it's always been in my blood. And I just, you know, now my son, who works alongside with myself, it's a blessing. I get to see him every day. We have an outstanding relationship, and the partnership, now that we're advertising, we're super busy. We're getting new partners calling daily and weekly, and it's making the game that much more fun.
I can imagine, and I can relate to the in your blood thing, because you know we laugh in my family. My mom was at Belmont Park the day before I was born, and was at Belmont Park a week after I was born with me in a stroller. So I get it. I grew up around the game my whole life, and share the same passion as you. Let me ask something. The clinical research company you got involved in, was that part of racing? Was that like racing involved, or was that out of the game?
No, it's on humans. It was with my ex-girlfriend, and she runs it. She does a fantastic job.
Okay.
But it was something totally outside of sports, outside of racing, and it wasn't anything that I was passionate about. So I knew I would always get back into racing. I really wasn't away from it. I just didn't have a vocation for that year. I wasn't an agent. I wasn't an active owner, but I would still go out frequently and still kept all the relationships. But I didn't have anything vocationally per se to do with the game.
Gotcha. Now, you know, one of the things that I'm most interested about partnerships, and even claiming stables and individuals. How does Nick and I guess your son Ryan, how do you guys go about picking horses, buying horses, and knowing what to go after? Because I mean, you've had a lot of success. You've had Axelrod, Maxim Rate, Madame Dancelot, Beau Recall, who's one of my personal favorites. I cashed a nice ticket or two on Beau Recall. So how do you find these horses?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on the horse. You know, we shop at the yearling sale. We shop at the 2-year-old in training sale, OBS, March, April, and June. And then we also buy quite a few Euros. So it just kind of depends on where the horse is.
Right.
There's really, you know, we claim as well. So there's really not a facet of the game that we kind of don't try to buy from, I guess you could say. And they've all kind of served us well. We've tried to claim a few more horses here at Del Mar, but we keep on getting out shook. We've only gotten one claimed here so far, but we do it all, John.
It's tough. I like the Euros. I mean, I've been favoring them for years. I mean, now they're kind of like very popular and a lot of people go after them. I remember 15, I mean, I'm bad with time frames, but like 15 years ago, they really weren't that popular when they came here. And a lot of people didn't import them 20 years ago for sure. And I even liked them back then because I knew they train uphill, downhill with all that weight on them. So I'm like, see, any horse that's training uphill and stuff like that has to have somewhat, and on those wet courses as well, has to have an advantage on our flat, firm courses. And I personally think that holds true. So what are your thoughts on the advantages of the Euros when they come here? And why is it that you guys like them and had so much success with them? Well,
Well,
I think was a Euro, correct?
I'm sorry.
Well, recall was a
Oh
Euro.
yeah. She's my all-time favorite horse. She surpassed John Henry once I owned her and got to dote on her, and she got to lay her head on my shoulder. She was a special creature. She was a pet.
Right.
And it's not often that you find them that nice and they actually are that competitive. She was a very rare breed. But what you asked earlier, as my gardeners are back now blowing.
That's it. We can't hear them. Don't worry about it.
Okay. The European market has changed quite a bit for a couple different reasons, in my opinion. We started buying Euros about 4 years ago. I noticed this season that the horses were probably going for about twice as much as they used to go for. Like, we would buy in the $100,000 to $150,000 range. This year, those same horses were going for $200,000 and $250,000. So that has kind of kept. I haven't bought a Euro this year because of that. The other reason that I haven't is because of the whole Lasix rule. Used to be able to come here and you could move them up because the horse might be a slight bleeder, and over there they can't race on Lasix. You'd bring them here and it would be a huge move up factor, right?
Absolutely.
Well, now, once you get into graded stakes, you kind of that's taken away from you. So it's kept me. Those are the two factors that have kept me away from purchasing a European horse this year.
I gotta ask you this, because my passion, and I've been involved in different aspects of the game. I've owned horses. I've bred a couple of horses. I was actually a jockey agent for a very short time, a very unsuccessful one, many years ago at Naira. Not a people person and didn't know anybody, so I was walking around the backstretch with a rider that I really couldn't do any good for.
Who was the rider, John?
I had Donald L. Smith, whose father was Gail Smith, who was a pretty well-known rider. He was involved in the triple dead heat in the Carter Handicap. That was his dad. Donald was a rider for many years, a solid journeyman. Out of town, came to New York, didn't really know anybody, had the misfortune of hooking up with me, who couldn't really do anything for him. I mean, I didn't know anybody. I knew how to work hard and go around and see people, but nobody was going to really give me a shot. We did win a couple of races, and I did get on some good horses. We exercised a lot more than we rode, which I'm sure you know. But
oh, yeah.
It was an education that was invaluable going forward, being around the racetrack. But I always loved betting and always loved the gambling aspect, and was very successful at it. And to this day, I'm still somewhat successful at it. And I know you're into handicapping and betting as well.
Yes.
I have always felt, and correct me if you disagree, but I have always felt that being a sharp bettor gives you a different outlook on every aspect of the game, as an owner, as a jockey agent, because as bettors, we become a lot more objective. An owner, they see their horse the way a lot of people, and I'm not talking every owner, but the majority of them, see their horse like a lot of people see their kid. They say, oh, I love my horse, but are they fairly evaluating the competition? I think when we're handicappers and bettors and putting up money like that, it forces you to kind of be an evaluator of everything. I mean, when I had horses with Peter Walder, and if he was on the show, he would tell you, John never asked me if I like my horse. I ask him because he's more objective than me, Do you find that as well, that the handicapping side gives you a little bit of an edge and a different type of insight in other areas of the game?
Yeah, I definitely think being a gambler is an advantage. I think it's an advantage in all aspects of horse racing. I think as an agent, you're most critical. I mean, aside from the jockey who employs you, right? I mean, that's the crucial element. But outside of that, knowing where horses belong and placing horses are the biggest key in racing.
Absolutely.
Every horse has its level. So being a gambler, whether you're a gambling trainer, or you might not even have to be a gambler, let's just call it a handicapper. I think it's the biggest tool in the game.
Right. Yeah,
for a trainer, for a jocks agent, for an owner. because where you place those horses means everything.
I agree. You know, it's no secret, our sport in the past couple of years, and it's not really that it's only been happening in the past couple of years, but in the past couple of years, some of the negative sides of the sport and the troublesome issues of the sport have come to the limelight. And it's unfortunate for the people that do things right, but I wanted to ask you and get your take on, as somebody who has their future invested in the game with Slam Dunk, okay? Trying to bring owners in, trying to run your operation the right way, take care of the horses, put horses first. How difficult is it to attract people to the game and to the partnership with what's happening or what's perceived to be happening in the industry? And how do you see these issues, and what are your thoughts on some of the things we can do as a sport to clean our act up, so to speak, for lack of a better term?
Well, I've actually been on the opposing side. I've done a lot of counter protests down here at Del Mar, where PETA is probably most prevalent. I think the game takes a lot of cheap shots.
We do.
I think people that are so-called animal activists, they basically want no domestication of animals, period. They don't want me to have the 2 dogs that I have. They claim to be animal advocates, but they only want animals in the wild. So they're really not animal advocates, they're hypocrites. But what we have done as a sport and for the benefit of the animal over the last 3 years has been huge. We did. I think there's many things that we did without really giving it a whole lot of focus. For instance, the claiming game. How drastically that has changed over the last 10 years. It used to be when you claimed a horse,
That was it.
It was it. It was, if that horse died on the racetrack, whether it was a heart attack, a fatality, if it died in the stall that night, you owned it.
Right. Now
So I
voided
think it
claim.
kind of forced, the voided claiming rule. I think I don't want to say it forced, but it made a lot of people that perhaps should have stopped on horses or turned them out, go ahead and run those type of horses. Now those horses get time because there's no reason to run them, because you can't pawn them off on another owner. So that's just one of the ways. All the protocols that we put in place with all the vettings, pre-race, those have been huge in helping catastrophic injuries. You and I could have a whole segment of a half an hour talking about how the game has changed. I think for the most part, it's for the better, but I think there's a fine line between doing it to where it is adequate and to where it's overkill, to where it almost becomes a detriment to the people that want to get in the game to potentially make this a profitable sport.
Right. And I agree with that. Where we may differ, and I don't know, is I think that a lot of what's happening is due to our, and I say our as an industry's failure to kind of weed out and police the people who aren't doing the right thing. And I think that's kind of shed a negative light on the sport and opened the door for the groups like Peter and the so-called animal advocates to come marching in. I blame us as an industry for opening that door and letting a lot of the stuff go on that's gone on over the years. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, there's bad actors in every sport, right? We could sit here and talk about, the steroid era in baseball. There's always going to be your quote unquote cheaters, your guys that are always trying to be one step ahead of the game. And, you look on the freeways, everyone's always speeding a little bit, right? I think we've done a pretty adequate job. We've done a great job over the last 2 years of weeding the bad actors out. I don't think any sport you can entirely rid everyone of the bad apples. But I think we've done a pretty damn good job at policing the sport over the last 2 years. And we've seen a huge drop in catastrophic injuries. And I think that has also now gotten PETA and the so-called animal activist groups kind of off of our backs, because I mean, they're at the Triple Crown. You see them at Belmont Park on Belmont Stakes Day. They kind of come out on the big days, but their tone and their voice has been very, very muted as of late.
Let me ask you this. What would make me, if I was looking to get in a partnership and you wanted to tell me, hey, John, come with Slam Dunk because of this, what's different about what I would get from you guys than any other partnership, besides some nice steak horses like Dream the Club?
Yeah, well,
we'll talk about in a minute. We'll get to him.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of pride our partnership on a couple different fundamentals. Number one, our policy of commissions or markups. Up until this year, we only marked horses up 5%. And a lot of people would say, wow, how can you make money doing it like that? And in all candor, I didn't make money. The only way I made money was for my horses to have to produce. If they didn't produce, I didn't make any money from this. But I didn't start this to make money, because when I started, I didn't even charge 5%. I did it for free for the first 2.5 years. So we're now at 10% on a commission, which is still far below industry standards. And then I also pride ourselves on the communication and the relationships that we put together. I mean, I keep this as very much like a family. It's very intimate. I don't want 100 partners on one horse. That doesn't mean we won't get to 100 partners, but I don't want, 101% partners. So we limit it to 5%. So the most there can be on any given horse is 20 partners. And that just makes everyone, you go down to the winner's circle and you feel like everyone in the group.
Right.
Nothing to me going down to that winner's circle. And this is what I share with a lot of people. And this is why I think partnerships are the great way to go. How much fun is it for Nick or John to go to the races by themselves, win a race and parade down to the winner's circle and take a picture by ourselves?
Right. No, I get it. Yeah.
There's been times where we don't have any partners out, or it might be a horse that I own myself, because there's quite a few that I do just own myself. It doesn't feel nearly as good going down there by myself as it does with a bunch of partners. So
I get that. That's something a lot of people don't get, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, it mitigates your risk. It cuts back on your costs. And to me, it's totally the way to go. And thirdly, what I pride myself on in Slam Dunk is our huge success rate. I mean, we don't buy the high dollar horses, but yet we compete in a lot of these big grade 1 races. And that's due to a lot of hard work, perseverance, and the people that we employ, along with myself and my son, doing our due diligence to find the right animals.
You've got 2 really nice horses right now that are kind of on my radar. One out west where you are Maxim Rate.
Mm-hmm. She runs this weekend in the Yellow Ribbon.
Right. I mean, nice horse on the stake level. And Drain the Clock, I would have to say, might be the stable star right now, because he's a fast 3-year-old and everybody loves those horses.
I would say he's the stable star right now, and I'm probably a little biased because I bred him. Yeah, I mean, he ran this weekend, and I don't know how much the slop affected him. Take nothing away from Jackie's Warrior. He beat us on the square on Sunday, and he's probably in the talks right now for the Breeders' Cup Sprint off the big win the other day. So, I mean, he's only a 3-year-old, but the way he's running, I don't know if there's a sprinter in the country that can beat him.
I agree. He's a really fast horse, and you guys did beat him the time before. He had a little trouble in that race, didn't get out the way he normally does, but you beat him, and your horse did something that I like to see in a horse heart-wise. He kind of came back that day to win that race at Belmont. So that's that's a sign of some guts.
Yeah, he's a gutty individual, and I don't think his second this weekend is the last we're going to hear from Drain the Clock.
What kind of plans do you kick around for him going forward? Keep him sprinting, maybe a mile? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, right now the races are a little limited, John, because you kind of want to stay against your own age group. So there aren't a whole lot of 3-year-old sprint races. We'll keep him at Saratoga. We'll run back in the Allen Jerkins, and we'll probably have to face Jackie's Warrior again. It wouldn't at all upset me if we could ever draw outside of him.
Right.
I think that's a huge edge. That's kind of why our jockey in the Woody Stevens tried to get outside of him, and it worked. The other day, Joel Rosario was going to have none of that. He was never going to let us get outside of him. And, maybe if we get outside, we might be able to turn the tables on him. But he's a really good horse. Our horse is no slouch either.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's got to be super exciting when you have a horse running in races like that, on cards like that. I mean, that other race is on Travers Day, I believe. I mean, what's that like? You want to race on Derby Day? I know that. Bo Recall won on Derby Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's that like with a bunch of partners? You know what I'm saying? Like kind of can try to convey that to me.
It's the ultimate, I mean, all these big races. I'm just a racing fan. I grew up around it, like we said earlier. Like, I'm not going to say that I get charged up with winning maiden claiming races. I do a grade 1. They all mean something to me. I'm highly, highly competitive. I don't like losing. But God, I got to tell you, when we went back to New York for the Allen Jerk or for the Woody Stevens, and, being that I bred Drain the Clock, someone asked me, and I forget who it was. It was someone from TVG, and I hadn't given it any thought. They said, tell me the difference between winning a big race as an owner or the big race as an owner of a horse that you bred. And I don't know, it just came to me immediately because I coached my son in Little League Baseball. And I said, it almost feels like winning a grade 1, which we won with Maxim Rate 5 days before the race in New York with Drain the Clock. Winning a grade 1 with a horse that you own is like winning the Little League World Series on a team that you coach. Winning with a horse that you bred, like Drain the Clock, is like winning the Little League World Series where your kid hit the game-winning home run. And it was seriously, it was like a blackout moment. I mean, from the 16th pull to the wire, I don't remember what happened. We were all just screaming for him to dig back in and fight, and Jackie's Warrior's digging in. He's a competitor, tough to get by. The last 16th of a mile was a complete fog. And really? I hope to relive that again.
Do you watch the replay?
Oh, I've tried to make it my damn ringback tone.
Yeah.
Can't watch the wins enough, John. You know that.
I do. Now, let me ask this. Does Ryan, your son, share your passion?
Yes. He actually was. I was a junkie growing up as a kid with horse racing. He was bred into it because I didn't have any family members that worked on the racetrack or involved directly tied to horse racing. My father was a gambler. That's how I was tied. But he has me as a father and jock's agent. And then his grandfather on his mother's side was a jockey turned trainer. He's now retired, Danny Velasquez. So he's kind of top and bottom horse racing. Tried like hell to push him out of it. I wanted more for him. Promised him that if he went away to college and got his degree, that I would show him the ropes and do anything I could to help him. And I'll be damned if he didn't go away for 4 years, get his degree and get done and say, Dad, all right, let's do it. And now he's a huge asset. He's my right arm. He loves the game. He's better with people than I am. I'm better with animals than he is. He's better with people than I am. And it's a match made in heaven.
Interesting. Now, how tough is it from a business? You're a business guy, jockey agent. How tough is it to be in a business where you want to attract people to buy into Slam Dunk, and you can't get around the fact that there are so many horses and so many partnerships and just so many ways to lose, and only one way to win. And you know, I've spoken to a lot of different partnerships, and they always say the same thing. Well, you got to tell people come in, expect to lose. How tough does that make it to grow the game, attract people in? How much of an obstacle slash hurdle is that?
Well, you know, it's a game where, gosh, if you're batting 250, you're in the Hall of Fame, right? 25% Hall of Fame numbers. As an owner, as a trainer, as a jockey, anyone right now would say I'll take 25% for the year. So I'm brutally honest with new prospective clients as well as existing clients. I tell them, look, if this money is your hard-earned dollars and you really can't afford to lose any of it, horse racing ownership isn't for you. But if you have some expendable income and you want to have a blast, I promise you, you will have that. And I'm going to do my damnedest to make you money. The partnership has been profitable now for, well, since its inception. Every 6 months, our partners have gotten checks. And,
Wow, that's
you know,
pretty cool. I don't
yeah,
think there's a lot
and
of
it might not
partnerships
happen in the next 6 months. It might not happen 2 years from now, but I do feel the game, you know, that you do have to get lucky. There are some, you know, injuries, casualties, things of that sort, retirement, you know, they're 1,000-pound animals on ankles that are like stilts. But I do
right.
think if you manage this game properly and really, really watch how you spend, I think you can make this a profitable game. And we've shown you can do it.
That's it. It's interesting, and I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is going to be, but I'll ask you anyway. What is it that Slam Dunk does, and how much of an interest and/or role do you guys play in aftercare and retirement of your horses?
Well, for starters, there's a key element that I left out. I have no less than 20% of every horse that Slam Dunk owns that I have myself. So I have skin in the game. I'm a huge animal advocate. If I lived on a ranch, I'd probably have 20 dogs instead of 2 Jack Russell siblings.
Right.
Any horse of mine, I make sure that they're going to be properly cared for as their life progresses. There's been several horses that we've owned that have gotten hurt, and I either had the choice to put them down, which is oftentimes the humane thing to do,
Right.
or to do surgery on them, pay for the rehab, and find a home for them. And I've always elected for the latter.
Really?
We've only had one horse that we catastrophically had to put down, and it wasn't from a racing injury. It was from a blood infection, but there was just no rehabbing this horse. Outside of that, every single horse that we've ever owned, I've made sure that they've gone on to live a good life, and I've fully taken care of them.
That's good to hear. I'm big on that myself, and I think that's one of the weak links I was alluding to before. So it's good. It's good to hear that. Now, you guys got 80 horses, okay, in a short
We
amount of
don't
time.
have 80 now. I think we have 72 right now. We got up to 80.
About 72, 80, you know, not
About
a
the
big
same,
difference.
right? Yeah.
Right, yeah, but I mean, that's a lot of horses for a partnership to have, especially a partnership that's as old as, you know, or I should say not as old, because you're not that old, as new in the game as Slam Dunk is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Where you guys going from here? I mean, you're already kind of like there. You got Drain the Clock, Maxim Rate, competing in stake races. You're growing. Where am I going to see Slam Dunk 5 and 10 years from now?
Well, hopefully you see me with the Triple Crown winner, John. I mean, you know, it's a big hill to climb. You know, racing. I'm involved in 2 sports: horse racing and golf. And I'm
Okay.
probably a masochist, because those are the 2 sports that are almost unattainable. No matter how good you think you are in golf, your chipping's bad one day, putting bad, driving. It's a rarity that you have all the skills in golf in your bag on the same day. And that's why we see different, you know, guys winning tournaments every week. There's a lot of parity. The skill level's never the same. Same thing with horse racing. I don't know anyone that's conquered the sport. So I'm just going to keep on digging in. You know, the grade ones are starting to come. We're starting to get better animals. We're starting to get partners that are spending more money, for us. And not that more money always means better horses, but it generally kind of equates. So we'll be buying horses as yearlings this year in September at Keeneland. And we just hope to keep the ball rolling and hopefully one day win the Derby and possibly even win the Triple Crown. That would be my goal.
So the Derby and the Triple Crown, the 3-year-old big races are what you got your eye on.
Well, I want to win races and I want to make ownership as profitable as possible. You know, if you're claiming, you know, if I had a new group and we're claiming a $40,000 4-year-old filly, I can't win the Derby with her.
Right.
But yeah, do I have goals to win the Derby? Absolutely. We haven't had a Derby starter yet. To be totally candid with you, I don't know that we've ever bought a horse where I've said this is going to be our Derby horse. We've bought a ton of fillies. I thought we had an Oaks type horse a couple of years ago, but she got hurt. But yeah, just competing on the big stage, the national stage, on the big days, and just enjoying life, enjoying the sport, and talking to people like you. That's what it's all about.
Do you think Maxim Rate or Drain the Clock might be running at Del Mar in early November?
Well, Maxim Rate's running next week in the Yellow
No,
Ribbon.
I'm talking about Breeders' Cup. So
For Breeders' Cup.
That on the radar?
Not for Drain the Clock. Maxim Rate, if she wins the Yellow Ribbon, comes out of it well, we'd probably go to Santa Anita and run on the Rodeo Drive.
Right.
And then however she runs and comes out of that race, we would then look at potentially the Breeders' Cup. She's definitely worthy of it. And it would probably be her swan song before retiring her and selling her at the Keeneland or Fasig-Tipton sale. Drain the Clock as a 3-year-old. I don't think I would run him against Olders at this point. I don't think he's quite ready for that.
Right. And I like to hear that you take the conservative approach. I think a lost art in our sport, and as an agent, you could probably, an owner, you could probably validate this a little bit. I think a lost art is the guys that really know how to place their horses and pick their spots. I remember like people used to criticize Wise Dan. Oh, you should run him here, you should run him there. I thought they campaigned him artfully. Same thing with Zenyatta. I thought she was campaigned, artfully. And I think that's kind of been lost in social media, and everybody's got an opinion, and this one should run here and that one should run there. I think knowing where to run and picking those spots to get to the big dance or the goal that you have for your horse is an art. You know what I mean? Is really a big part of success in the game. What do you think?
It absolutely is. And we alluded to that earlier when we were talking about, placement of horses. I ran across with Axelrod years ago. Michael McCarthy and I kind of butted heads a little bit on where he should run next. He had won the Smarty Jones, and then he ran in the prep for the Pennsylvania Derby. And I thought it was wise to keep him there. He would only have to run against McKenzie. It's $1 million race. He kind of wanted to take on the big boys in the Travers. I felt it was the right thing to do in keeping him in Pennsylvania. We did that. We ran second. I think that was the right move for that horse. Drain the Clock. It was kind of hard to pull the plug on him when we ran him in the Fountain of Youth. Safi kind of thought, he thought he could get him to go a little bit of a further distance. I sat down and we hashed it over, and we decided the best thing to do, which was in his best interest, was to shorten him up rather than to lengthen him. And that, I think that was the prudent, smart thing to do for the horse. But it's not always easy. A lot of people get Derby fever.
Right.
And a lot of horses have been ruined because of Derby fever.
Hard not to get it, I guess, when you have a 3-year-old,
Yeah, it's a race everyone wants to be in. It's a race everyone wants to win. But some of these horses just aren't equipped for it. And,
right. No, I agree. I say if you've got a sprinter or you've got a horse that's not, quote, a Derby horse, take the sprinter out and get the most out of your horse. But it's easy for me to say, never having been in that position. I'm sure the argument would be hey, this might be your only shot to go to the Derby. You got to swing the bat or you can't get a hit, so.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would be conservative. I believe you let the horse take you instead of you taking the horse, if that makes sense.
That's exactly what I said. It's very profound, and it's not, it's not that out of the realm. I said, if to Bradley Weisbord when we were running in the Fountain of Youth, because his people bought into him. And I said, Bradley, if he runs well in the Fountain of Youth, he is going to have to take us to the Florida Derby. We are not going to drag him there. And Bradley's like, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. And his effort in the Fountain of Youth, to me, said he does not want to run that far. We pulled the plug, and that was the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. Hey, Nick, absolute pleasure talking to you, man. I wish you and Slam Dunk and your son Ryan the best. You're now a friend of the show and past the wire. We'll have you back on, hopefully talking about some big win in the near future. And how do people find out about Slam Dunk? Is there a website? Do they, where can we have our viewers find out about Slam Dunk?
Well, we can be found. It's pretty simple. We can be found on slamdunkracing.com.
Easy enough. Slam Dunk
Did I lose you, John?
No, you're here. Slamdunkracing.com. Nick Cosato.
Okay, I thought I lost you there. I just had a message come through, so it kind of.
Yeah, technology's funny, but no worries, you're here. Hey,
Are you gonna be at the? Will you be at the spa for the Allen Jerkins by chance?
I don't think so. You know, I go every year. I didn't go last year because of the pandemic. Okay.
Right.
And
right.
This year, when I was getting ready to go, nobody knew how it was going to be. Are they going to have fans? Am I going to get media pass? Is it going to be normal? Is it going to not be? I didn't know. I said, you know what? I'm just not going to go this year to heck with it. So I'm not going this year unless I just get that bug to go up for Travis weekend, which you never know with me. I'm liable to do it. But I'm definitely coming out for a week for the Breeders' Cup. So that's.
Oh, great. So you'll be at Del Mar and we'll get to meet here then.
Absolutely. I'll be there. I think I'm sitting in the ancient title room. They tell me it's nice. So yeah, we'll be there for sure.
Okay. Well, if we don't meet at the spa, we'll meet at Del Mar where the turf meets the surf.
I look forward to it. And thank you for coming on. I'll stop this now and then we'll be there in a minute. Hang on.
Nobody does it better.